let me start. The mic's on now. They're all working now, right? Okay. The chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes for the purposes of an opening statement. The Subcommittee on Commerce, Trade, and Consumer Protection is holding a hearing titled "It's Too Easy Being Green, Defining Fair Green Marketing Practices." During this hearing, we will be taking up the truthfulness of green advertising claims, consumer perception of green claims, and the role of the Federal Trade Commission in regulating these proliferating claims. More than ever before, the shelves of our supermarkets, hardware, big box, home improvement, and pet stores are being lined with goods bearing labels touting themselves as natural, biodegradable, eco-friendly, sustainable, carbon neutral, recyclable, and non-toxic, just to name a few. With the increased demand by these stores for more green products, we have seen an increase in third-party companies certifying these green claims. While some responsible companies have created certifications and labels backed by criteria and testing, other companies have spotted an opportunity amidst the consumer demand for information. For a fee, these companies will certify anything as green, affording false comfort to purchasers that the products meet environmental and safety standards. Just to cite a few relevant statistics, in 2008, consumers purchased $290 million in natural household cleaners and supplies. In addition, the Wall Street Journal reported in April 2009 that there are more than 300 such environmental labels putting a green stamp on everything from cosmetics and seafood to bird-friendly coffee, end of quote. Because there are no common agreements on generally accepted definitions related to the meaning of many of these words, and since consumers are being bombarded by so many of these claims and certifications, there is legitimate concern that some consumers are basing their purchasing decisions on misleading and in some cases even deceptive labels. And I'm especially concerned that Americans with less disposable income to spend on, quote, green, end of quote, goods are not getting the benefits that they expect when they spend their hard-earned dollars on these goods, which promise more and often cost more at our checkout lines. At the conclusion of today's hearing, I would like for this body to have more insight into the FTC's update of its green guides and how extensively consumers, manufacturers, and advertisers are consulted and relying on these guides. Second, I want for us to discuss whether the FTC should be more aggressive in monitoring and or regulating the placement of claims on products, and how, in the flow of commerce, can the Commission ensure that green labels are more useful and informative than is currently the case. Thirdly, I would like for us to explore the role of the private sector. We'll ask how responsible vendors of truly environmentally responsible and safe products can differentiate themselves from the products that make unsubstantiated claims. And we'll examine the role of the privately run certification and labeling programs. I would also just add another goal and objective possibility that there might be another role for the Congress to play in these matters, and we will keep a keen eye and a hearing ear the role that the Congress should be playing in this particular matter. I look forward to hearing the testimony and to participate in the exchange that follows. I want to thank you all very much for agreeing to help us examine this product and come up with constructive proposals to address the issues that we have identified. I yield back to Ballas. I don't have any more time. So now it's my pleasure to recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee for 5 minutes for the purposes of an opening statement. My friend, the gentleman from California, Mr. Radonovich, is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you also for calling this hearing to examine green marketing practices. We all agree that consumers should not be deceived through false marketing when making a decision to buy a product. Such dubious practices would fall squarely within the Federal Trade Commission's jurisdiction when a company violates existing labeling rules or when a company clearly makes a false statement about its product with the intent to deceive. I understand the Commission has taken several enforcement actions against companies for such practices, and they should be commended, and I look forward to hearing more about these when Mr. Combe testifies shortly. I agree with the premise that a business that markets its products as green should be held accountable for accuracy and truthfulness. The problem arises from the larger debate about what is green and who will define it and how will it be defined. Consumer confusion does not help anybody, but a simple solution does not readily exist that all stakeholders can agree upon, which is why we're having this debate. I imagine we could ask 10 different people to define green, and we would not be surprised if we received 10 different answers. Many consumers seek out recyclable or biodegradable products, and these products may be labeled accurately and be attractive to consumers for their environmental sensitivity. However, depending on how we define green, a recyclable product could be considered greener than a biodegradable one, or vice versa. And that is a relatively simple example of similar products. When multiple variables are considered in the determination, the comparison of the products becomes more complicated. Regardless, some of the discussions and suggestions that we will hear today will focus on the Environmental Protection Agency. For purposes of this hearing, we would be better served confining our discussion to the area of our jurisdiction over the marketing practices and what would be defined as an unfair or deceptive practice under the FTC Act. I would also suggest the subcommittee should hear the views of businesses that are manufacturing products that may fall subject to FTC enforcement. Ideally, mutually agreeable definitions for the purposes of marketing will emerge through a process of all stakeholders working together. This may not result in a one-size-fits-all approach, but it will have the benefit of an open and transparent process where everybody has a voice and all viewpoints are considered. The marketplace implicated by this discussion is extremely broad with many diverse products. If the goal is to enforce manufacturing practices that leave a smaller footprint on the earth through consumer marketing appeal, the definition of green must be inclusive. Labeling and marketing are intended to be tools that educate the public, not points of litigation, and more importantly, they should not be the goal of a given product. Further, we have seen many unforeseen consequences of technological advances that were supposed to help reduce environmental footprint, but had the opposite effect due to unwitting consumers. Energy efficiency and the ENERGY STAR label may be useful, but not only to the extent that they alter the overall consumption of home energy use. Saving more energy on one product may be beneficial, but if the savings is used to keep the television and stereo on longer, the environmental picture hasn't really changed. Ultimately, the consumer's use of the information is what really matters. I only point this out because consumers are hard to predict. We continue to battle obesity in this country despite extensive labeling requirements for decades. Labels can be a useful tool for information if the consumer uses it wisely and is not inundated with information overload. Foods may be accurately labeled as low sugar, low carbohydrate, or low fat, but that does not change the overall trend of increase in the average calories Americans consume. One final point I will make, which is I'm certain experts have discussed, is that any green standard should take into account the diverse geography of resources of this country. For example, if new green standards delve into the life cycle carbon footprint of a product, manufacturers should not be disadvantaged based on the limitations of available energy resources to which they may be captive. To do so based on today's desires will cause more harm than good. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and also our witnesses today for appearing. I look forward to your testimony, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair thanks the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maryland for 5 minutes for the purposes of an opening statement. Mr. Sarbanes of Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't take 5 minutes. Appreciate your convening this hearing. This is definitely something we need to look at. This is kind of the next big thing when it comes to labeling, I think, and the role of this committee and the FTC and others to put in place a regime that makes sense with respect to green labeling is a very, very important one. There's no question when you go to the store, I fall prey to this myself, and you see this green labeling or these green claims that are made that you're either thinking green is healthy or you're thinking green is environmentally friendly. You're basically in the mindset that green is good, and so it does have a very powerful effect on people's purchasing patterns and their expectation of what they're getting for themselves and their families. So the notion that claim is being made in many instances when it can't really be justified is one I think that's offensive to many, and certainly to the consumer that's looking for that seal of good housekeeping when it comes to what is environmentally friendly and what is healthy. I don't worry too much about the question of what is greener than the next thing, as long as the things that are claiming to be green have met a certain baseline standard and definition. And I certainly recognize it's going to be difficult to come up with those definitions that can have some sort of uniform application, but I think we can find our way to it, and our panelists today will help us think that through. The other point you made is just as important, and that is it's not fair to those businesses and manufacturers and others who really are trying to do the right thing and make products that are green in all their different aspects, to have a system that is allowing others to make false claims with respect to whether they're delivering green products. And the more sinister view to take on that is it actually discourages companies from doing the right thing, because they say, well, what difference does it make if I can just slap a green label on something and get the benefit of that in terms of marketing? Why not cut corners? So there's many reasons to pursue this on behalf of the consumer and on behalf of businesses that are trying to lead the way with good practices. And thank you for convening the hearing today to look at those issues. And I yield back my time.
The chair thanks the gentleman. The chair now recognizes, for the purposes of opening statements, Dr. Gingrey from Georgia. Dr. Gingrey, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know you can't help notice I'm sitting here drinking this soft drink in a green can. This is by the great Coca-Cola Company, and they don't imply anything in here about being environmentally friendly. They just tell you how much caffeine and what a great soft drink this is, and it is a good soft drink, but it has nothing to do. But certainly you get the impression, and you could package something in a green. Even politicians, I notice in the last campaign cycle in our state, more and more politicians actually wearing green shirts and having a green logo, and just that subliminal message. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you, of course, for calling the hearing today on green marketing techniques that are clearly being used now more than ever by all types of companies and individuals. Unfortunately, despite the increased efforts by corporate citizens attempting to be more environmentally friendly, there's still a great deal of confusion that exists, particularly for the consumer, with the way that these marketing practices currently function. The FTC issued its own set of environmental guides back in 1992 called the Green Guides. And this working document allows the FTC to better understand what constitutes false or deceptive green claims within marketing. However, although these guides provide a base of understanding for the FTC, the green guides have not been fully updated since when? 1998. And so that leaves a wide gap between the increase in green marketing and the way by which we understand these techniques today. Mr. Chairman, there are some fundamental questions that we must answer at the outset of any discussion of green marketing. First and foremost, how is this marketing defined? As this panel of witnesses will describe, there are varied interpretations of how companies use these marketing tools. Is green marketing an environmental matter, or is it a health matter? It can be argued that individual consumers may have different ideas of what green means for them. So this needs to be factored in any discussion that is had by the FTC as it updates these green guides. The last question, and arguably the most important for this subcommittee, is what role the FTC should play in the structure or enforcement of green marketing. The FTC already has the authority to conduct investigations on false and deceptive marketing practices, and this should be taken into consideration as regulations continue to be updated. Mr. Chairman, with the increase in green marketing that have occurred, there are still a number of question marks that exist, both for companies and for consumers. And I think in this realm, Jim Henson's lovable character, Kermit the Frog, may have said it best when he said, "It's not easy being green." I look forward to hearing from our panel on these increasingly omnipresent issues, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The chair, thanks to the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Castor, for 5 minutes for the purposes of opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for calling this hearing. Good morning. In recent years, we've had a substantial increase in products that promote environmental consciousness and how their products minimize environmental impacts. There's an increasing public awareness of the dangers of climate change and environmental degradation, and Americans want to help, naturally. And one of the places folks look to reduce their environmental impact is at the store. The last few years have seen a proliferation of new products marketed as being green or environmentally friendly, and frankly, this can be confusing for consumers. Consumers have a hard time telling the difference between companies that do the hard work to develop products and manufacturing processes that are more sustainable and environmentally friendly, and those companies that simply start printing their labels in green with sustainable written on the label, and then charge a green premium for the same old dirty products. It seems sometimes that some retailers and product suppliers are engaged in a race to poorly define and use meaningless terms like sustainable and eco-friendly, and with that, there's a real risk that consumers will lose confidence in the entire concept of having a sustainable product or a green-friendly product, and that consumers will simply tune out the environmental message. A study by the Shelton Group found that consumers surveyed in 2007 were between 22 and 55% less likely to buy a wide range of green products than in 2006. And a major factor in that decline was message overload. Consumer groups have done an admirable job of stepping up to try to provide clarity by operating independent claims verification and marketing standards groups, and I look forward to hearing from some of those groups who are with us today. However, they still must compete with unreliable and unscrupulous certification programs that are all too often concerned more with collecting the fee than in reliably labeling the product. I'm very interested in what more we can do to help consumers cut through the noise and find the truly sustainable products that they would like to purchase. I yield back my time.
The chair thanks the gentlelady.